Hey guys, I hope you all doing well, and today we shall see how lists work in Python. And lists are like a set of items. Like we use lists to store values. You can store items in a list, and within what we shall do, we shall look at creating a list, how we can create a list. We shall see how we can add items to a list, and we shall see some of the properties of a list. We shall see how we can index list items, and how we can slice a list in case we need a range of values. We shall also look at concatenation, how we can add two or more lists. And yeah, so we shall start by creating a list. And now if you are to create a list, I shall use the terminal, and I will use my interpreter. This is the terminal. So we shall start by seeing how we can create a list. We can give a variable, as you know what a variable is. So we can say that an example. Now this is how we can create a list. You can declare the command list. That means whatever that an example, this example you've created, it means you've created a list. We can also create a list in the same way, but a bit different, like just putting square brackets like that. So that declares that the word example is a list. So whichever that is in example renders it to be a list. So on our overview, we know now how to create a list. So let's create a list. For example, maybe a list of primes. So we're going to create a list of primes, and primes are those numbers that have two factors, one and itself, right? So we can say that maybe primes is equal to a list. So the reason as to why I want to use this one is it's a bit easier to, like the curly brackets, right? It's the common used and a bit simpler. So we have 1, we have 3, we have 5, we have 7, we have 11, we have 13, we have maybe 17, and we have 19. Yeah, something like that. So this means that we've created a list called primes. Therefore, if you print primes, primes will be a list, right? As you see it here, it's a list. Therefore, that's how we can create a list. And now we want to add something to this list, right? So let's learn how to add something to a list. Now, if you are adding something to a list, we use adding to a list. Now, if you're adding to a list, we use what we call appending, right? We append. Adding to something is appending. But now with Python, if you say append, it understands it's a reserved word in the Python, or it's part of the Python dictionary. Therefore, we shall be using append to add something to a list. So let's see now. For example, let's add maybe something to this list. For example, 23. Yeah. So if at all we are adding another another prime number, maybe 23, to this list, what we shall do is you write the list name, then dot append the list name, then dot append then the value you want to add, for example 23, right? If you want to add 23, yeah, something like that. And you can add a lot of values if you want. You can even add 20 something, or 31, yeah. Maybe primes dot append 31. I don't know if it's a prime number. Hope it is, but it's fine. This is so you realize that when we print again, when we print primes now, when we print primes, you'll see it has now increased. It's now 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 19, 23, right? So that means we can now add anything to our list. I told you take a list as a store where you can store something, right? Yeah. So we are going to see how we can now some of the properties of a list, right? Now, what you have to know about lists, that lists can accept multiple. It can accept like multiple data types, and it can also allow duplicates. Now this is how it differs now to a set. Now you realize that a set does not allow duplicates, but however a list can allow duplicates. You can have 2, 2, 1, 1. We shall see an example. It can allow duplicates. What else with the list? And a list, we shall see others as we are going. And what I can give you an example of, for example, if I give you something like maybe roles, that is a variable. So if roles is equal to, like, it can have the multiple data types like 2, 2.1, that is an integer. Now 2.1, 2.2 is a boolean, is a float. Then we can have boolean. Boolean is maybe true, false, something like that. Yeah. So that's how Python understands false and true. That is boolean. So it can also have strings, maybe semi. It can also have which other data type? It can also have the list in a list, right? Yeah. So for example, having maybe 32, false, yeah, something like that. A list in a list, right? Yeah. So as I told you, let's just use this very example. It can also allow duplicates, right? For example, you have 2, you can have you have 2, you can have 2 again, yeah, you can have 2 again. You can have you can as well have 2.1, 2, 2.1, something like that. You can also have another name called Sami around here. You can also have Sami. So it can allow duplicates, right? Let me put this one up. Yeah. Sorry. Let me reduce. Yeah. So it can also have duplicates, maybe Sami. Yeah. So if we print, we did not put a comma here. Separate. Put a comma somewhere here. Yeah. So what it says there is something wrong. Yeah. So now here it works. Now you see rows, we have 2, it has a duplicate of another 2, 2.1, 2.12, then false, those are multiple data types. Semi, again semi, then it can also have a list in a list, you get. Sorry about this syntax error. This means that they don't understand this place here. False, then semi. So you have to separate the list items, right? Yeah, I guess that's fine now. Let's see on indexing list. Now, if you are indexing list, indexing refers to pointing out something, right? In case we use indexing, in case we want to access, specific values in a list, right? For example, in our under indexing, we are what we do under indexing, we are accessing. We want to access specific values in a list. So now, for example, if we go with our example for primes, now primes, remember we have 2, 5, yeah, something like that. Maybe we want to access 3, right? We need to access 3. So maybe to print 3, right? Like I want to access a prime number called 3. So as we are with indexing in computer science, we count we start from 0, not 1, right? Not 1. So not 1. That means when we are counting, the index values should be 1. Like while counting the index, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Right? Like that. That means if I want to access a prime number called 3, like if I want to access this, it means its index value is, you come and count 0, 1, 2, 3, like that. So it's 0, 1. So if I want to access this, it means it is at index 1. Therefore, you write the name of the list, then you put 1. That means it's going to print whatever value that is at index 1, right? So you will see that it has, if we print, it is printing 3, right? So for example, now the last example, if I want to access 17, I'll come and count 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it means I want to access 17, and therefore I'll write primes of 17, right? That means prime of 6 primes, then index at 6. So this means it should give us 17. Yeah, this means it's at a place of 17. Now, while counting, we can also index at negative values. For example, it's counted in this way. The last value is always at -1. So this is -1, this is -2, -3, -4, as you're coming this way. You get? Right? So for example, if you want to access 31, I might not count the whole of this up to 31 in case the list is too huge, right? So what I can do is I can say primes. I can try now to access the last value, maybe something like -13, -1, right? So that means my answer will be 31. Yeah, something. So you see, so the answer is 31. I hope we are together. Now we want to see how slicing works. Now with slicing, 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 as those who have ever prepared matoke, you can slice it into portions. So we use slicing in lists in case we need a range of values. Maybe I want from, for example, if at all I wanted from 11 to 9, and I want all those values to be printed, right? That's when we can use slicing. So with our example of primes, I can say primes at maybe, for example, this one is 0, 1. I want now from 5 to maybe 17. So I'll count. This is 0, 1, 2. So this means I'll start from 2, right? So I'll start from 2. What? If I want to count, this is 2, right? This is 0, 1, 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, something like that. So let's go up to 6. Yeah, something. So this means I'm going to get a range of values from index 2 to index 6. So this means if we print, now those who are following and you are keen, you realize that we commanded this program to print from index 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 17, but realize that it did not bring 17, right? It did not bring 17, it stopped at 13. What does this mean? This means while indexing, the first value is included, but the last index, the last value's index is not included. You get like if at all I wanted also 17 to be, if I at all I wanted 17 to be in, then I would say primes from 6 to, from 2 to 7. Yeah, so 17 now will be on. So this means that Python will include the first value, but it's excluding the last value. So you need to put that in mind. It's very, very important. That's slicing, and you can do a lot with slicing. For example, if I want the values from maybe from index 2 to the rest, right? You can write it that way. Maybe from 2 to, that means up to all other values that are there. So it will bring, but however, it does not bring the first indices like 0, 1. It doesn't bring those values, right? So I think we are also fine with slicing, and what we can also do is let's try to see how we can change values in a list. Now changing values in a list, though I did not include it here, but it's very important. How we can change values in a list is this. For example, I want to remove 17 from this list of primes, right? For example, our list of primes is that, and I would like to remove maybe 13, and I put 12, right? Yeah, and I want to remove and I put 12, something like that. So I can say primes. This means in the place of 13, so we can only access these items by their indices. So it is at index what? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So it's at index 5. If you say it's equal to maybe something like 12. Yeah, so you realize that this value is going to be changed to 12. So if I print primes again, you realize that 13 is nowhere to be seen. It's only 12 in the place of 13. Now let's see how we can concatenate lists. So list concatenation. Now list concatenation, concatenation refers to joining, right? If I join this and this, it's called concatenating. Yeah. So how can we join lists? Like maybe you have two or more lists and you would like to join the values, right? For example, I have numbers as maybe 1, 2, 3, and I have letters. Now with the letters, I can take something like A, B, C, something like that. And if at all I want to join these lists, maybe I can give them a variable join, and join is equal to, so you just add, right? We concatenate using a plus sign. So numbers plus letters. So if you print join, so it will be joined, right? And the reason as to why it is joining numbers and like numbers first and letters last is because as we are joining, you say it's numbers now plus letters. So if you say letters, plus numbers, it will be the other way around. You get I think that is how we can concatenate lists. So we've seen how we can use lists, and we said, just a small recap, we said we can create a list by the square brackets or by the word itself, list, and we try to create a list of primes, and we saw how we can add to a list, and we said we add to a list using a word called append, and we appended some two values to the list, and we successfully appended the words. And we also said that lists can allow multiple data types and as well as duplicates, and we saw how we can do that. And we said we can also index values, like accessing specific values in a list, and we also saw that by using the indices. And we said that as we are counting, we count from 0, not from 1, and there we can access values, and we said the last value is given an index of -1. And we also talked about slicing, and we said slicing is when you want to achieve a range of values in a list, or a range of list items. And we tried to access a list of values from 5 to 13, and we also put across a note that while you are indexing, always the first index, the value of the first index is given but however the value or the list item of the last index is not included. Therefore you have to put that in mind. And we also talked about changing of values in lists, and we successfully changed 13 into 12, and it changed. And we also lastly talked about list concatenation. That's how you can join lists, and we gave an example of a list of numbers and a list of letters, and we joined them to come up with a solid list. And however, if you print the letters again or one of the lists, it remains independent, so it doesn't mean that it changes the way it appears. I think with that we can use lists. A lot of the reason as to why we give you introduction to lists is you will use lists in a lot of things. You will be storing values in a list, like you want to store a list of names, a list of food, a list of everything. So lists are very important in Python. You can ask me any question, you can reach me on my email. Thank you so much. That is it. See you in the next tutorial.